Okay, we'll start now. So first of all, before I go to actual question paper, because today what I'm going to discuss is 2024 philosophy optional paper 2, part A, that is part of socio-political philosophy I'm going to discuss. And we'll try to find out what can be the model answers for that. But before I go to actually discuss the questions and model answers, I just want to say a few things to the students who are watching this video. In socio-political philosophy paper, besides while you are appearing in the exam, besides your handwriting has to be legible and you have to follow the word limits. You have to follow the directives of the questions very strictly. Because you should not try to write whatever you know about the topic. You have to first find out what is actually asked, and then only you have to write that thing only. Now, after that, 2, 3 other important points. As you know, socio-political philosophy is not only philosophy, but sociology plus political science plus to some extent law also. So you have to take the references from these subjects as well, whether it is Constitution of India, whether it is political science, political thinkers, whether it is sociologists, or whether it is legal thinkers. All those references, the thinkers plus their creations, as well as what statements they have given, what views they hold, all those things will come here. And last point which I want to say is this whole paper, I mean, this whole part has to be answered with respect to India. So Indian context. So even if some general question is asked, you have to definitely give 1 or 2 small examples pertaining to Indian context, maybe Indian polity, Indian society. So along with the philosophy, you have to understand sociology part, the political science part, legal parts, plus their Indian context also. So all those things have to be included in the answer. And I'm sure if you follow all this, your answer will become quite good and attractive. Now, we'll discuss the questions one by one, and we'll try to find out what can be the model answers. So now let me come to the document which I want to share, and then we can discuss. Now, if you know, already you might have seen this paper, 2024 optional paper. It has in part A, paper 2, it has 4 questions. First question is 5 parts, 150 words each, 10 marks each. Then second, third, and fourth questions will be 3 parts. First part will be 20 marks, roughly about 300 words you have to write. And then about 2 other questions, part B and part C of these 3 questions will be there, where you have to write in about 200 to 225 words. So now let us try to understand all these questions and what can be the proper answer about, with respect to the directive of the question and whatever points I have told just now. So now first question we'll take up. Answer the following questions in about 150 words each. Now in this first part is A question is briefly discuss Plato's concept of justice. Now this is the question. This has to be answered in about 150 words. So concept of justice has to be discussed. Now directive says discuss, which means about exposition, that is Plato's concept of justice, you have to tell, and then you have to also critically evaluate it briefly. I mean, maybe you will not spend about 40% space or so. You have to limit it to 25 to 30%, but then definitely it has to be there. So then only this discussion will be complete. And as I keep on telling, in philosophy, writing answers in paragraphs which have logical transition from one paragraph to other, or logical separation from one paragraph to other, is always better than writing it point wise, or bulleted points or numbered points, because that will also show the examiner that you can write well, and this is the test for that as well. So therefore, we always try to write, unless it is clearly asked in the question that you have to enumerate, or you have to just list out some points, then you can obviously put bullet points or numbered points and then answer yours. So now let us see this. Plato's concept of justice articulated in the Republic. Now, this is first reference we have quoted. Rests on the principle of harmonious order both in the individuals and the state. Justice arises when each class performs its natural role without encroaching upon others. The state comprises rulers, that guardians, and producers. This reflects the tripartite soul where reason governs, spirit upholds, and appetite obeys. Justice for Plato is not equality, but the right ordering of parts toward the common good, ensuring social stability and inner harmony. It prioritizes functional specialization over individual autonomy. So this is the Plato's concept of justice in brief. On the one hand, state; on the other hand, even soul also, human soul also, or individual also. So both he has compared. Now, as I told, since the directive is discussed, so we'll also take some brief critical evaluation, because it's not critically evaluate or evaluate. So we'll not, otherwise we would have spent about 40% of the space or number of words to that part. But now here we are going to do 25 to 30% still in the discuss directive. So however, critics like Karl Popper in the Open Society and its Enemies denounce it as a totalitarian, sacrificing freedom for rigid hierarchy. Bertrand Russell, another critic, critiques its reliance on fixed natural aptitudes, ignoring human adaptability and social mobility. So this is again very important critique of the Plato's rigid classification. Despite these critiques, Plato's justice remains a seminal vision of moral order, psychological balance, and societal cohesion. So this completes our answer. Now here, as I told, we have critical evaluation. We have taken very briefly because the directive is discussed. Had it been critically evaluate, we would have at least spent 40% of the space for criticism and evaluation and conclusion. Now we'll go to second part. Part B, present a brief account of origin and development of social contract theory. So this is second question, second part B of question 1 of paper 2. The social contract theory emerged to explain the origin of political authority and legitimacy. So you see, directly we are hitting the bullseye. We are not talking, because in 150 words, you cannot waste number of words in introduction or unnecessary dealing with historical events, or even going this way or that way of the question. You have to directly answer the question. So social contract theory emerged to explain the origin of political authority and legitimacy. Its earliest traces appear in the sophist thought, notably Glaucon's in Plato's Republic, who framed it as a rational compromise to escape the insecurity of the state of nature. Now you see here social contract theory is originally linked with Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. But here, since its general thing has been asked, brief account of origin and development of social theory. So therefore, we have also mentioned here Greek links also of social contract theory, because this will make your question or answer complete. So therefore, it has been mentioned. Now, from there, we will jump to Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. So now let us see. It formalized with Thomas Hobbes, Leviathan was his book, influenced by realist traditions like Machiavelli, arguing that humans, driven by fear and self-preservation, surrender absolute rights to an authoritarian sovereign for security. So this was the Hobbes view, which was influenced by Machiavelli. The students who know political science, who have already gone through political science, they may be knowing, they might have already studied the social contract theory. So it's easy for them to understand. But non-political science students will face little. You have to study it, and then see this answer, then you will be able to make out the answer, I mean, in a very easy manner. John Locke, he has written two treatises, his book, revised it into a liberal contract protecting natural rights, life, liberty, and property, justifying limited government. Then again, Rousseau, he has written the book Social Contract. So you see, not only the political scientists have been quoted, thinkers have been quoted, but also their references, their books have been quoted. This kind of answer will make the answer better, because if you don't quote the references, it will be, I mean, not treated as complete. So that you should note. Rousseau shifted the focus to popular sovereignty, where individuals submit to the general will to achieve freedom. So you see, important words also have been. In fact, I keep on telling to students, while in my notes, whatever important words are there or phrases are there, they will be bold. But while writing answer our practice test, you please do underline such words and phrases so that it's directly it attracts to attention of the examiner. In the modern era, John Rawls, he has written the book A Theory of Justice, reconceptualized it as a hypothetical device for fairness, using the original position and veil of ignorance. Thinkers like David Gauthier and T.M. Escalon extended contractarianism into contemporary moral theory. So now you see, right from, if you see Greek, here we have taken Greek, and then Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, who are the main proponents of social contract theory, and then we have also gone to modern times also. So this, when you see the directive, present a brief account of origin and development of social contract theory. So accordingly, we have gone. So we have strictly as per directive, because here there's no scope of critically evaluating this theory, because directive does not say that. It's only saying that brief account of origin and development of social contract theory. So right from Greek to modern times, we have completed this answer. Now we'll go to C, discuss the main factors responsible for caste discrimination. Now this was C part, 150 words and 10 marks question. Caste discrimination, now definitely, since caste discrimination has been asked, it has to be referred to India, because outside India, even though there are various classes and various other color discriminations, but caste discrimination is particularly relevant to India only. So accordingly, this answer is caste discrimination in India stems from an enduring interplay of historical, religious, economic, and socio-cultural forces. So this sentence itself, I mean, start is quite good, because it enumerates number of factors, and it hits also the bullseye, because you see, the question is discuss main factors responsible for caste discrimination. So from first line itself, we have briefly mentioned what kind of factors will be there. Now let us try to go further. Rooted in the Varna system and codified in texts like Manusmriti and Dharma Shastras, it institutionalized hierarchy based on ritual purity, heredity, and exclusion. Now, after that, we are quoting a few thinkers. Louis Dumont, in Homo Hierarchus, emphasizes how the purity pollution paradigm sustains caste hierarchy. B.R. Ambedkar, another modern thinker, modern Indian thinker, argued caste is not merely a division of labor, but a division of laborers. So this is again a very important statement from Ambedkar, structurally embedding inequality. Economic marginalization, occupational immobility, and landlessness reinforces exclusion. Scholars like another now modern scholars we are quoting, Gail Omvet and Anand Teltumde, highlight caste's intersection with capitalist exploitation and class oppression. Endogamy, ritual segregation, and intergenerational prejudice perpetuate it socially. So, in the contemporary context, Suraj Engede, his book is Caste Matters, notes how digital exclusion, algorithmic bias, and urban informal labor markets reproduced caste hierarchies, underscoring its adaptive resilience despite legal safeguards. So now you see, the question is, again, I'm reading the question, discuss the main factors responsible for caste discrimination. So on the one hand, historical and cultural and economic factors we are talking. We are quoting several thinkers, political thinkers, sociologists, and then we are also linking it to modern times. Because in modern times, also digital exclusion or algorithmic bias or urban informal labor markets, etc. So they are further reinforcing the caste hierarchies. So then, and here also we are not critically evaluating this because the directive is not like that. Discuss the main factors responsible for caste discrimination. So we are going 100% and one has to go also because number of words are limited. So if you discuss this, I mean, everything about the topic, you will not be able to serve the purpose or you will not get good marks. So this completes this answer. Now we'll go to D. Present an exposition of concept of alienation as propounded by Marx. So here the directive is present an exposition. So definitely we'll present an exposition, but briefly we will try to bring in a critical part also because exposition is not never complete unless briefly critical part is included in that critical evaluation part. So even though we will give very less space, maybe 25% space to that. So let us see now. Karl Marx's concept of alienation, articulated in economic and philosophical manuscripts of 1844, explains how capitalist production estranges workers from their labor, products, fellow beings, and human essence. For Marx, labor is central to self-realization, but under capitalism, it becomes external, exploitative, and dehumanizing. So this is Marx's concept of dehumanization or alienation. Marx identifies 4 dimensions of alienation. Now, this again, we are elaborating it because this is the directive from the product of labor, from the labor process, from species being, and from fellow workers. So these 4 kinds of alienations he has identified, and that this we have listed. Now we'll go to critical evaluation part. However, critics like Hannah Arendt argue Marx over reduces human fulfillment to labor, ignoring political and creative realms. So another critic will go to Max Weber. Max Weber attributes alienation also to bureaucratic rationalization and Richard's. So another third critic, Richard Sennett, highlights that precarious labor in modern economies both challenges and perpetuates alienation. So despite these critiques, Marx frameworks remain a powerful structural critique of capitalist exploitation. So now this completes the answer. Now we'll go to E part of this question. Compare socialism and communism as 2 distinct political ideology. So now we'll try to answer that. Socialism and communism are distinct yet related ideologies aimed at dismantling economic inequality through collective ownership. Socialism now, see, this is first introduction or brief, you can say, linking line or linking paragraph to next paragraphs. So this talks about both socialism and communism. Now we'll talk to socialism and then we'll talk to communism. And in while talking to socialism and communism, we'll try to briefly bring critical point also in a very brief 1 sentence or so in each paragraph. So now let us see. Socialism advocates public or collective ownership of key industries while allowing regulated private property and democratic governance. It pursues economic equality, welfare, and social justice through gradual reforms. Thinkers like Edward Bernstein, Anthony Crossland, and G.D.H. Cole, so all these are thinkers, political thinkers, promote mixed economies, welfare states, and cooperative models. In contrast, now what communism says, in contrast, communism theorized by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Now these two are the proponents of the communism, envisions a classless, stateless society based on the complete abolition of private property. It requires a revolutionary overthrow of capitalism, followed by the withering away of the state as operationalized by Vladimir Lenin. In essence, socialism works with democratic systems, balancing equality with regulated markets, while communism seeks absolute egalitarianism through revolution, eliminating class, private ownership, and state entirely. So now this is in brief summary of what has been said in previous paragraphs, and this completes the answer. Now we'll go to second question. As you know, second, third, and fourth questions have 3 parts. First part is 20 marks in 300 words. Second and third parts are 15 marks each. And we will be replying about in 225 words each. Now let us see. Delineate the central tenets of humanism. How does advent of enlightenment in Europe pave the way of humanism? Discuss. So now there are two parts in the question. One more very important point. If there are more than one parts in question, you have to address both the parts. Otherwise, you are not going to get you are not going to get evaluated on full marks or full maximum marks. So here two parts are there. So both parts have to be dealt adequately, and then we'll see how to proceed. So first, delineate central tenets of humanism. This is first part. And then how does advent of enlightenment in Europe pave the way for humanism? This is second part. And we have been asked to discuss. Now let us go. Central tenets of, now here we are putting the headings also, because now we have to separate two parts, and this is 300-word question. So we have to discuss, means we have to critically evaluate also in 20-25% words. We have to devote for that also. So now let us go. Central tenets of humanism. Humanism is a philosophical worldview that places human dignity, autonomy, and rational capacity. So these three are very important terms at the center of intellectual and ethical pursuits. It asserts that humans, through reason, critical inquiry, and ethical responsibility, can shape their destiny independent of divine intervention. So this is humanism in brief. Now, what are these various tenets of humanism? Tenets, let us see. First, primacy of human agency. Humans are rational agents capable of self-determination. And here we are quoting one thinker. His book is Oration on the Dignity of Man. Mirandola symbolizes this ideal. Now, rationalism and scientific inquiry. This is second important tenet. It emphasizes on reason, empiricism, and skepticism advanced by Francis Bacon, Descartes, Galileo, and Newton. So along with the points, we are also quoting various thinkers and philosophers who are directly, or political scientists who are directly related with this. Secular morality. This is another important tenet of humanism. Ethics based on human welfare, justice, and compassion, advocated by thinkers like Erasmus and J.S. Mill. Then individual dignity and freedom. Upholds rights, liberty, and equality, championed by Locke, Montesquieu, and Rousseau. And then faith in progress. Belief in education, reform, and scientific progress, exemplified by Condorcet and Diderot. Now we'll go to second part. How Enlightenment paved the way for humanism. The Enlightenment, that is 17th and 18th century, institutionalized humanism, religious absolutism. Thinkers like Kant, Locke, Rousseau, Voltaire, and Diderot championed, so these are the thinkers, important thinkers, championed reason, liberty, secularism, and scientific inquiry, reframing humans as self-governing moral agents. The maxim, dare to know, this Latin sapere aude, dare to know, embodied this intellectual shift. This led to secular governance, universal education, constitutional rights, and democratic institutions, all practical embodiments of humanist ideals. Kant's moral autonomy, Locke's natural rights, and Diderot's encyclopedia were landmark contributions. Yet, the Enlightenment was part of a broader continuum. The Renaissance revived classical ideals. The scientific revolution fostered empirical reasoning. The Reformation championed individual conscience, and the Industrial Revolution accelerated faith in human mastery over nature. So what we are trying to say is, yes, Enlightenment was, definitely helped in humanism onset, but there were other factors also. And Enlightenment was one of its part. It was not totally responsible for this. So there are other responsible factors also. For example, Renaissance, then scientific revolution, then reformation, and then industrial revolution. So all these are also very important importantly contributed to humanism. However, later thinkers like Adorno and Horkheimer critiqued that instrumental. So now we are trying to, this part, last two paragraphs are in a way critical evaluation kind of thing. However, later thinkers like Adorno and Horkheimer critiqued that instrumental rationality born from the Enlightenment also enabled colonialism, industrial exploitation, and ecological degradation, revealing the paradoxes with humanist modernity. So, this is very important critique. You see, this whole thing was not positive. On the one hand, yes, humanism was there, but then colonialism in that era itself it started. If you India was also a colony of Britain and so many other countries. Industrial exploitation was at peak, and ecological degradation, because now everybody is talking of ecology, but at that point of time nobody talked, and then indiscriminate ecological degradation took place. So all these are very, very important critiques. So this has happened. Now I will go to part B of the question 2. Critically evaluate the concept of liberty and equality as political ideals. Now you see here the directive is critically evaluate. So we are, whenever such kind of directive is there, you have to go 60% for exposition and 40% for critical evaluation. This has to be your answer format. So now we'll also follow the same, because here we are going to devote 40% of number of words, because about 225 words we are trying to answer this question. So let us see. Liberty and equality are foundational political ideals underpinning democratic thought. Liberty, articulated by Locke, Mill, and Berlin. So these three are very, very important thinkers as far as liberty is concerned. Refers to the freedom from arbitrary constraints, that is negative liberty, and freedom to realize one's potential, that is positive liberty. So they have both kinds of liberties. They are negative as well as positive. So then only liberty discussion is complete, unless we quote and tell about both. Liberty safeguards individual autonomy, creativity, and moral agency, forming the basis of civil and political rights. So this is liberty. Now let us go to equality. Equality emphasized by Rousseau, Green, Condorcet, and John Rawls. These are the thinkers who put adequate a lot of emphasis on equality, demands the equal distribution of rights, opportunities, and social recognition. It encompasses formal equality. So here equality is also of two kinds. You see, liberty, negative as well as positive, equality formal as well as substantive. So formal equality, that is equality before law, and substantive equality, that is addressing structural disadvantages, ensuring liberty is meaningful for all, not just the privileged. So this is again very, very important. So now liberty and equality we have explained. Now critical evaluation directive says you critically evaluate this. Now we'll go to critical evaluation. Now, despite their complementarity, tension persists. Now, what is the tension? Let us try to understand. F.A. Hayek warns that enforced equality may suppress personal freedom and economic dynamism. Similarly, Nozick, in Anarchy, State and Utopia, it is his book, Robert Nozick's book, argues that redistributive equality violates individual liberty and property rights. So what is the tension between equality and liberty? Here we are trying to emphasize or say that. Conversely, Amartya Sen critiques liberty without capability-based equality as hollow, and Cohen contends Rawls' difference principle tolerates unjust economic inequalities. Then another thinker, Marion Young, extends the critique, highlighting how liberty and equality must address intersectional justices related to gender, race, and class. In essence, while liberty protects autonomy and equality safeguards fairness, their reconciliation remains a dynamic and context-sensitive project at the heart of democratic justice. So this concludes part B. Now we'll go to part C. Present an exposition of Gandhi's view on secularism as one of the foundational principles of democracy. So Gandhi's views of secularism as one of the foundational principles of democracy. So here you please be very, very careful. Here we need not describe whole Gandhi's view of secularism. What we have to do is Gandhi's view of secularism, how it is one of the foundational principles of democracy. Now, this is a very, very tricky question, because if you start describing Gandhi's view of secularism, and because in 200 to 125 words you have to answer, so you cannot waste number of words in talking about Gandhi's secularism in general or foundational principles of democracy in general. You have to very, very cleverly link in very, very first or second line, and then try to address the directive. So now let us see. In any pluralistic society or democracy, secularism becomes indispensable to harmonize religious diversity with the principles of justice, equality, and civic unity. Mahatma Gandhi's conception of secularism, however, diverges from Western idea of strict separation between religion and state. So in first, in 2 lines, we have tried to link secularism with democracy, and also tried to mention what actually is, or how different is Gandhi's secularism. Now, next we will see. For Gandhi, secularism meant sarvodham sambhav. Now, this also I keep on telling. Wherever you are talking of Western philosophy or Western thinkers, Latin and Greek original quotes you have to bring. Wherever you are talking of Indian thinkers, Sanskrit quotes also you need to bring, because that will upgrade your answer. So here same thing. For Gandhi, secularism meant sarvadharma sambhav, equal respect of all religions, rather than exclusion of religion from public affairs. He believed that religion is the moral foundation of both personal conduct and public governance. Democracy, in his view, must be rooted in spiritual pluralism, interfaith harmony, and ethical politics. Influenced by Leo Tolstoy, John Ruskin, and Ramakrishna Paramahansa. These three were the important thinkers who have influenced Gandhi. Gandhi viewed all religions as valid paths to truth. He envisioned a state that draws ethical guidance from religion without privileging any one faith. His role in the Khilafat movement embodied his commitment to interfaith solidarity. Now, while Gandhi's model fosters ethical democracy and compassion-based pluralism, critics like Rajiv Bhargava, now we are try to put a few critical points also. Rajiv Bhargava, Ashish Nandi, and Martha Nussbaum argue it idealizes religious harmony, which can falter amid communal tensions. Moreover, rooting public morality in religion risks blurring the line between neutrality and faith influence, potentially enabling soft majoritarianism. So these are the critiques, and this paragraph is a critical evaluation of how secularism or religion, if linked to democracy, can sometimes distort the thing. Now, yet Gandhi's secularism remains a context-sensitive articulation of democratic secularism, where diversity is ethically dignified rather than politically suppressed, an approach deeply relevant to multicultural democracies. Now, this conclusion is very apt conclusion as far as Gandhi's secularism linking with democracy is concerned. Now, I will go to third question, which is again a 300-word question and about 20 marks question. Do you agree with the view that Aristotle was more successful than Plato in steering a middle course between statism and individualism? Discuss with arguments. So question is whether Aristotle was more successful than Plato in steering a middle course between statism and individualism. So now let us try to answer that. The tension between statism and individualism represents a central dilemma in classical political philosophy. Plato's Republic embodies a model of normative statism, where the collective good eclipses individual autonomy. His proposals, such as the abolition of family and private property among the guardian class, reflect the belief that private attachments undermine justice and social harmony. While ensuring collective order, this rigid collectivism faces enduring critiques. Now, this Plato's view on statism and individualism we have talked. Now, some critical points also, notably from Karl Popper and his book, The Open Society and Its Enemies, and Bertrand Russell, for subjugating individuality to an abstract vision of state harmony. because Plato in a way has subjugated individualism to statism. I mean, that is what the criticism is by Karl Popper and Bertrand Russell. Aristotle's politics. Now, Aristotle has written the book Politics, as you know, consciously steers a virtue-based communitarianism, balancing civic cohesion with individual flourishing, while affirming that man is by nature a political animal. Aristotle rejects Plato's extreme statism. He champions private property, family, and personal responsibility, arguing, as noted by Ernst Barker, one thinker, that virtue is cultivated within, not despite, these institutions. His mixed constitution model, later praised by Montesquieu, reflects an effort to harmonize collective stability with individual perception. So now these two paragraphs itself are very clear that Aristotle's model is better than Plato's model as far as midway between statism and individualism is concerned. Now let us see further exposition and critical evaluation. Yet Aristotle does not fully escape communitarian constraints. So even though Aristotle's model is better, but it still is not fully perfect model. His claims that polis precedes the individual aligns with the communitarian views of Charles Taylor and Michael Sandel, suggesting that individual identity is meaningful only within the civic framework. Moreover, his exclusion of women, because Aristotle has excluded women, and defense of natural slavery. Now, these are very, very negative points as far as Aristotle is concerned, reflect significant ethical blind spots. So that was the problem with Greek philosophy. So here it has been brought out. Nevertheless, Aristotle achieves a more effective and pragmatic synthesis than Plato. His vision balances the moral obligations of the community with the dignity of personal identity, a middle path whose echoes persist in civic republicanism and contemporary communitarianism, making his resolution of this classical dilemma enduringly relevant. Basically, in last paragraph, we are trying to conclude that yes, Aristotle's views were more better or middle path between statism and individualism than Plato. Now we'll go to B part. On what grounds would you accept or reject idea of capital punishment as an effective deterrent? So here you see the question is on what grounds you will accept or reject. So basically you have to select whether you are going to accept that or you are going to reject, and then you have to discuss the grounds for that. So here what I have taken is I am going to reject it. So accordingly the answer is elaborated. Now if you take, because both ways you can talk, but then you have to think which answer can be ethically more sound, because in philosophy paper definitely you have to be philosophically and ethically correct. So perhaps opposing capital punishment is a better option here, which I thought, and therefore I'm doing that. Capital punishment is often justified as the deterrent against heinous crimes. However, this instrumentalist rationale is ethically contested and empirically weak. Thinkers like Cesar Beccaria, his book is Crimes and Punishments, argued that certainty and proportionality and not severity deter crimes most effectively. This view is echoed in Law Commission of India's 262nd report also, which found no empirical evidence proving that the death penalty is a more effective deterrent than life imprisonment. Then again, Bentham and Mill, from a utilitarian standpoint, allow for punishment only if it maximizes collective welfare. Yet the risk of irreversible miscarriages of justice, often borne by marginalized groups, undermines such utility. The Supreme Court of India, now we are quoting Supreme Court cases also, in Bachchan Singh versus State of Punjab, very, very important case, acknowledged the subjectivity in applying the rarest of rare doctrine, because Supreme Court has constituted rarest of the rare doctrine in which the capital punishment can be given. But in this case, they also acknowledge that there is subjectivity involved in that. From a Kantian deontological perspective, Capital punishment may align with redistributive justice, yet Immanuel Kant's emphasis on autonomy and dignity suggests that the state must treat individuals as ends, not as a means, even when punishing wrongdoing. Then again, Mahatma Gandhi, principle of Ahimsa, and Vinoba Bhave's philosophy of reformative justice further reject vengeance-based penalties, urging humane transformation over retribution. In sum, deterrence cannot morally or legally justify capital punishment in a society founded on dignity. So, justice and fallibility. Ethical governance demands restraint, not replication of violence. So now this, in this answer you might have seen, we have quoted Western philosophers, we have quoted Indian philosophers, we have quoted various ethical theories and try to bring out on ethical grounds, this cannot be justified. Now I'll go to C part. Is economic development a necessary condition, sufficient condition, both for or neither in order to achieve social progress? Now the question is, I'll read it again, very important question. Is economic development a necessary condition, sufficient condition, both or neither in order to achieve social progress? Give reasons and justifications for answer. So in first paragraph itself, you have to clarify whether it is a necessary condition, whether it is sufficient condition, whether it is a both or neither. And then accordingly, you have to give reasons in about 225 words. Now let us see. Economic development is often assumed to drive social progress. However, while it is a necessary condition, since poverty, hunger, and lack of basic services hinder social well-being, it is not a sufficient condition. So in the first paragraph, we are clarifying that yes, it is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. Now we will try to further elaborate that. Thinkers like Amartya Sen, through his capability approach, his book is In Development as Freedom, argue that economic growth must enhance real freedoms such as education, health, and dignity to count as the true progress. Martha Nussbaum, she's another important thinker, extends this by emphasizing emotional and social capabilities as central to human flourishing. So she has added emotional and social capabilities also. Merely increasing GDP, as critiques by Joseph Stiglitz and Thomas Piketty, so these two thinkers, show may exacerbate inequality and exclusion. So if economic development is unchanneled, unchecked, it may increase inequality and exclusion as well of marginalized communities. So this is what has been said here. B.R. Ambedkar, another very important Indian thinker, argued that unless caste-based and social hierarchies are dismantled, development cannot ensure dignity. Similarly, Mahatma Gandhi emphasized Antyodaya, uplift of the last person, not mere industrial progress. Lohia, another philosopher, thinker, political thinker, insisted on economic equity with social justice as inseparable goals. India's experience shows that while economic reforms post 1991 boosted growth, indicators like Global Hunger Index and Gender Gap Index reflect persistent deprivation. Hence, economic development is necessary but not sufficient for genuine social progress. Now, this is in a way conclusion. Now, what is true progress? True progress demands a justice-based model that incorporates ethical governance, redistribution, empowerment of the marginalized, and environmental sustainability. Thus, social progress must rest on inclusive capability, expanding development that treats people as ends, not as a means. This is another from Immanuel Kant. So we are bringing here. So this concludes the answer of part C of question 3. Now we'll go to question 4, part A. This is the last question of socio-political philosophy. Discuss gender equality as a necessary condition to achieve empowerment of women. Also examine the role of women empowerment in curbing the menace of female foeticide. So now here, two parts are there. So again, we will take up two parts in a balanced way, because we cannot exclude one part, because if you exclude, you are not going to be evaluated for full marks. So this is very important. So now first part, in such questions, it's better to put headings also, so that you are able to demarcate the answers very, very clearly, because these are two distinct parts. So accordingly we have done. So first part is gender equality as a necessary condition of women's empowerment. So this first part, and then second part we will take up second. Gender equality is not merely a goal of social justice, but a precondition for genuine women empowerment. Empowerment entails enhancing a women's capabilities, agency, and autonomy in both public and private spheres. Without gender equality, defined as equal access to rights, opportunities, and dignity, empowerment remains rhetorical. Feminist scholars like Martha Nussbaum and Amar Sen have emphasized that gender equality expands human freedom and capability. In Indian context, Articles 14, 15, and 16 of the Constitution of India enshrine formal equality. Yet, persistent gaps in education, employment, unpaid care work hinder real empowerment. So, we are bringing Indian context as well as some critical points pertaining to Indian context also. True gender equality also demands redistribution of power within families, workplace reforms, and representation in governance. As Nivedita Menon, another modern thinker, argues, empowerment is not charity, but structural change. Thus, equality is not just complementary, but foundational to empowerment, enabling women to act as agents of social transformation. Now, this is conclusion, a very good conclusion from Nivedita Menon. Now, we'll go to second part. Role of women's empowerment in addressing female foeticide. Female foeticide, despite legal provision under, there is already act, so PCPNDT Act 1994, but still, it goes unchecked, persists due to deeply entrenched patriarchal norms, son preference, and dowry-related anxieties. Women's empowerment offers a long-term corrective, not merely through laws, but via assertion of agency and value. Empowered women, when educated, economically independent, and politically active. So now this is very important term, you please see, when educated, economically independent, and politically active, are more likely to challenge discriminatory practices, raise daughters with dignity, and influence community norms. The success of self-help groups, so some examples also we are giving, which are good programs, good as per Indian context are concerned. So success of self-help groups, increased participation in panchayats, and campaigns like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao reflect this shift. Now we'll go to last paragraph, and however, Kamala Vasin, now here critical evaluation part also we are going to bring. So Kamala Vasin and Flavia Agnes, so these two are modern thinkers, caution that empowerment must move beyond tokenism. Legal rights must be backed by access, awareness, and cultural change, because only legal rights are of no value unless there is access, awareness, and cultural change. Only then can empowerment serve as a moral and social deterrent to gender-biased sex selection, which is foeticide. Now we'll go to part B. What insights does Arthashastra of Kautilya offer with regard to concept of sovereignty? Does it have any relevance in modern times? Critically discuss. So this we have to answer in about 225 words, and critically discuss. The directive is critically discuss. So we'll devote about 40% to critical evaluation. 60% will be for exposition. So, and in 60% also, if you see, there are two parts. What insights does the Arthashastra offer with regard to concept sovereignty? This is one part. Does it have any relevance to modern times? This is second part. And then we have to discuss this whole thing critically. So now let us see how well we can write this answer. The Arthashastra of Kautilya conceptualizes sovereignty not as an abstract ideal, but as a pragmatic construct grounded in the science of statecraft, Dandaniti. So this is the term from Kautilya. The sovereign is nucleus of a seven-limbed polity, Saptang, that is king, minister, territory, fort, treasury, army, and allies. These are seven parts of the polity, where stability, surveillance, and realism override utopian morality. Sovereignty lies in maintaining order, securing artha, that is material prosperity, and preempting threats through real politics. Kautilya's mandala theory is one very important theory from Kautilya's sovereignty of interstate relations, anticipating balance of power model shows remarkable foresight in international political theory. In modern times, now we'll go to whether it is applicable to modern times or not. Let us see. In modern times, the Earth Shastra offers enduring insights. Its emphasis on state legitimacy through competence, internal order, and strategic foresight resonates with Max Weber's rational legal authority. So, and Kenneth Walt's realist theory. Its early articulation of reason defeat predates Machiavelli. However, its utilitarian ethics, including the use of espionage and deception, raise normative concerns in liberal democracies based on transparency and rights. So these are the negative points, and these are some positive points as far as Kautilya's theory are concerned. Thinkers like B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi prioritize moral legitimacy and constitutional restraint over strategic cunning. Moreover, Kautilya's monarchic assumptions are at odds with modern participatory sovereignty. So that also is a difference, because he was preaching statecraft in a monarchy, and here now it's a popular democracy or participatory democracy. So now definitely that kind of his theories cannot be fully related. So same thing has been mentioned here. Grounded in popular will, as emphasized by Rousseau. Yet, the Arthashastra remains relevant for understanding governance in fragile states, counterinsurgency, and diplomatic strategy. When supplemented by ethical accountability and constitutional morality, so it has to be supplemented by ethical accountability and constitutional morality, because these are the requirements of modern democratic states. It can inform a context-sensitive, ethically grounded theory of sovereignty suited to India's plural democratic order. So, what has been concluded is not fully applicable, but yes, some points may be properly modified or properly modulated, can be of use in modern times. That's what has been mentioned here. Now we'll go to part C. Discuss the role of ethical principles of tolerance and coexistence for the rise of multicultural society. So we'll start. The emergence of multicultural societies rests on more than institutional diversity. It requires the ethical principles of tolerance and coexistence. So now we are directly going what is the directive of question. Now you see, discuss the role of ethical principles of tolerance and coexistence for the rise of multicultural society. So we are going to discuss how ethical principles of tolerance and coexistence are related with multicultural societies. So that's what is mentioned in the first line itself. The emergence of multicultural societies rests on more than institutional diversity. It requires the ethical principles of tolerance and coexistence, which enable respectful engagement among varied cultural, religious, and linguistic communities. Now, we are quoting John Locke in his book, in his letter concerning toleration, emphasized tolerance as an ethical restraint against coercing belief, establishing it as a cornerstone of liberal societies. However, mere tolerance may produce passive disengagement. So thinkers like Berlin, his book is in Two Concepts of Liberty, argued that coexistence demands active pluralism, acknowledging the legitimacy of diverse life words. Now, another, Indian context, Mahatma Gandhi and Tagore, we are quoting. Mahatma Gandhi's concept of Sarvadham Sambhav and Rabindranath Tagore's ideal of universal humanism exemplify an ethical framework that fosters harmony without homogenization. Modern constitutional democracies echo this. Now, how? Now we'll give the example from Indian Constitution. Indian Constitution through Articles 25 to 28 and Preamble also, emphasis on fraternity and secularism reflects the ethical commitment to peaceful coexistence. B.R. Ambedkar, the constitution maker, envisioned fraternity not as a uniformity but as a mutual respect among equals. Now, philosophers like Taylor and Bhikkhu Parekh further assert that multiculturalism demands both recognition and redistribution. moral empathy alongside structural inclusion. Without these ethical principles, multiculturalism may degenerate into competitive communalism. As Todorov, another philosopher, warned, tolerance divide of mutual understanding can mask paternalism or dominance. So, in conclusion, thus tolerance and coexistence are not passive virtues but active ethical commitments essential for building just, inclusive, and morally plural societies. Now, this completes the uh, today's discussion. Now, just one more thing I just want to tell all of you. Sometimes you may think that socio-political philosophy, part of philosophy optional, also a little similar with general studies papers, because I mean, and your preparation also should match like that. I mean, should be done like that, because it should complement your GSP preparation should complement philosophy optional, at least paper 1 part, paper 2 part A. So that also can help, because yes, it is in a way also related with general studies, because a few current affairs questions are also asked, and definitely political science, sociology questions are more related to either current affairs, or I mean maybe essay topics, or maybe your other GS papers topics. So that also you can think of. So with this, I complete today's this. Next class, I am going to take up the part B of paper 2. So philosophy of religion will complete, and then we'll try to start some other topics from philosophy optional as we sequenced earlier. So same thing will continue. So thank you for participating today and watching this video. Thank you.